Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Hot Mic Podcast. The Hot Mic Podcast is where divergent points of view debate and discuss hot topics. Welcome back. I'm your host, Nate the Barbarian, and as always, I am not alone. Hold on, let me get this off of here. What am I doing? There we go. There we go. What am I doing? Hello, everybody. We got Raven Mundy with us. Hello, Raven. How are you?
Good, good.
And of course, Kevin Aldridge, the voice of reason. How you doing, voice of reason? I can't hear you, bro.
Sorry, had myself muted. I said happy Friday to everybody.
Absolutely. And of course, sexy Phil Heimlich. How you doing, sexy Phil?
I should never have made that joke, but I will say, as I mentioned off air, I really think, I'm a great admirer of Kevin, but I really think putting that voice of reason title, I think it's misleading to the viewers. I just got to be honest. I think you need to be more straightforward in, what we put out, if you don't mind.
I told Phil I didn't make that up myself. The viewers confronted me in the streets with this, and as I told Phil, I don't think it was a compliment. I think it's kind of like my Rob Portman jab at him last week. 10 to 15 years ago, voice reason might have been a compliment. I don't think that was how it was.
Well, I got to update. Little housekeeping. I'm taking total blame on this, but TNT will not be joining us. Just a miscommunication between myself and her in terms of the topic. So it'll just be the four of us today, and we'll catch up with her hopefully real soon. So my apologies, TNT, on that. I just read her text message, but a lot to discuss, man. So much stuff is going on. But back to Kevin real quick. Look, when somebody confronts you in the street and they give you a nickname, you got to take it. That's just what it is. You got to take it. Whether you like it or not.
Excuse me, am I allowed to give him a nickname? Am I
only if you meet him randomly in the street.
Oh, okay. That's
you meet him randomly.
All right.
So let's get started. So a lot of stuff to talk about. Let's start on the national level. This week you had it wasn't quite the State of the Union. It was like a special joint session before Congress, and the President of the United States, Donald Trump, got up and he did what the President of the United States does. He talked a lot, told a lot of lies, but also gave us a window into what his agenda is. And it's terrible for working class Americans, terrible for senior citizens, terrible for anybody that's not already super rich. But a lot of things interesting happened. But one thing that really stood out is you had Rep. Al Green, who actually, if I remember correctly, he was the individual who initially put in articles of impeachment on Donald Trump during his first.
He's not the singer, just to clarify, right?
He's not the singer.
Okay,
but more than
I
likely,
think our audience might be a little confused. That's why I mentioned that. Yeah,
I'm glad you mentioned that. And he was actually kicked out of the joint session. I've got the video here. I want to play it for you, then I want to get your thoughts about it. Check this out.
Mr. Green, take your seat. Take your seat, sir. Take your seat. Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
There it is. Rep. Al Green being led out, and Speaker Mike Johnson cracking the gavel down, and he will maintain order. And there's been a lot of thoughts about this, even some critiques. I want to play a clip for you real quick from Charlemagne the God, and I want to get your thoughts as to whether you agree or disagree with what he had to say in terms of how the Democrats handled it. Check this out. Give me 1 second here because I'm clearly messing up. So give me 1 second. All right, give me 1 second. Sorry about that.
Did there, but issue. Old men for counsel, young men for war. Where was the young warriors? Okay, even if you didn't want to set it off like Congressman Al Green did, you gotta stand with him when he does. Okay, you gotta walk out with him in protest when they kicked him out. Al Green is 77. He out there with a cane, okay, looking like the old man in New Jack City. Rest in peace to Bill Cobbs. Remember when the old man was telling Nino Brown he going to hell? That's how Congressman Al Green looked. But where was the rest of the Democrats? Huh? Y'all left Captain America to fight the Black Order by himself. Imagine if those portals opened up in Avengers Endgame, but instead of coming out to fight, the rest of the Avengers just sat there and watched Captain America get embarrassed. That's what Democrats did to Congressman Al Green last night, and it made an
He said it made an already weak party look weaker. Do you agree with C to God? Is he correct in your opinion?
100%. First of all, props to Charlemagne. I thought that was funny. The New Jack City comment about Al Green, I just thought was hilarious. I immediately went back to that scene in New Jack. No, he's 100% right. I mean, look, I am one who is all about statesmanship and trying to maintain decorum and all of that. But I think, we are in times, unfortunately, where the normal fare of these types of events are out of the window, whether you like it or not. You are up against a non-traditional force in Donald Trump, someone who doesn't care about tradition, who doesn't care about statesmanship, who doesn't care about how things are normally done. And I think to keep what he does from being normalized, you've got to, you can't continue to kind of try to abide by the normal conventional ways of doing things, which I think Democrats have mistakenly been trying to do for far too long. They keep trying to take the high road. They keep trying to do this. And all it winds up doing is, even if unintentionally, is normalizing and giving legitimacy to Donald Trump. I think what Al Green was attempting to do there was to try to stand up against it. Look, I think Al Green knew what he was doing and what was going to happen as a result of what he did. And I think he was prepared to take those consequences. I think he wanted to make a statement that he was not going to sit there and listen to the president for 2 hours, spew lies and say untruths and, continue to damage our democracy. And I agree with Charlemagne that it would have been nice to see more Democrats walk out with him in protest. Now, I've heard different Democrats talk about the importance of staying in the chamber and standing up to Donald Trump and not forcing them to leave the chamber. And maybe not everybody leaves, but there certainly should have been some people who stood with Al Green and walked out in that moment. Al Green comes from an older generation where this type of civil disobedience and protest was what they did. And I think the fact that, more Democrats, more Black Democrats, particularly more younger Democrats, weren't willing to stand with him and walk out, I think did make the Democrats, look weaker. I think it's not uncustomary to see, the Republicans do the same thing when there's a Democratic president. They sit on their hands, they sit in their seats. They don't applaud, on applause line. None of that. People are trying to make a big deal out of that. None of that is uncustomary. Republicans do the same thing. But I think here's where you look at how Speaker Johnson dealt with that situation and how Democrats have dealt with it in the past. You remember, I forget the Republican who stood up and shouted, "You lie."
Joe Wilson.
Taylor Green.
Yeah. None of them were escorted out by the sergeant of arms. That guy, the guy who shouted "You lie" at Obama, if my memory doesn't mistake me, he was not escorted out, and he was every bit as disruptive as Al Green was. Marjorie Taylor Greene during Joe Biden's State of the Union, same thing, very disruptive. She was not escorted out by the sergeant of arms. So you see how the Republicans are trying to do it. I think Al Green was trying to make a statement. I also think Speaker Johnson was trying to make an example and a state a statement out of Al Green by sending him out. And if you see how the Republicans in the chamber reacted to that by singing, nah, 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 hey, 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 goodbye. How childish do you get from that? But that wasn't deemed as disruptive by the speaker as well. So I think, look, we are in times where, unfortunately, I think some of the norms of politics are not going to be that for quite some time, at least not for the next 3 or 4 years while Donald Trump is here. So if you are a traditionalist who is about decorum and these sorts of things, those rules no longer apply. And I think that the Democrats are going to have to adjust to this new reality.
I mentioned it yesterday. I actually officially started my podcast yesterday, and I talked about the behavior overall of Democrats at the State of the Union yesterday, and it bothered me. Number one, he wasn't just kicked out; he was also censured. He was also, made basically the Congress's version of a tar and feathering was what happened to him, and I guess I say I can appreciate Democrats standing in solidarity with him as he was being censured and, publicly punished for his behavior. But I agree with Kevin. The entire behavior of Democrats yesterday did not impress me at all. The signs were cute. The little moments where the camera panned over, they were all holding up their Musk Steel signs or their, lies or whatever else was on those paddles that they had in their hands. It was cute, but it was very performative, and I'm sure that it was meant to be performative, but it does nothing to inspire me or impress me as a young Black voter. And I think that a lot of my peers share that same sentiment. We didn't want y'all to sit there and be quiet and look angry. We wanted you to show some passion, to show like that you actually care. And letting that man get kicked out by himself showed none of that. Sitting there quietly and just looking pissed off and throwing up your sign every time he told a lie, that wasn't enough for the young voters who are looking for candidates, who are looking for representation, that are passionate about the issues that we care about. Nothing about yesterday was impressive from the Democratic Party. Like, I get, as Kevin said, I get the desire to want to, maintain statesmanship and the dignity of the offices that they hold, but we are no longer there politically, and I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. I mean, it's a mostly bad thing because it's a shame that we can't conduct our government in a respectful way, but we're just not there anymore. We live in Trump's America right now, where the opposing side don't give a damn about statesmanship. It don't give a damn about being respectful. We saw it in the last 4 years with Joe Biden, when Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert during his State of the Union address. Both were very rude, very interruptive, and still were not censured, still were not kicked out. I'm thinking maybe they should have been. I didn't even know what a censure was until watching the State of the Union address. If I'm being honest with you, I didn't know that was a thing. But now that I know it's a thing, why didn't that happen with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert? Like, I get wanting to maintain a certain level of dignity and respect, but y'all Democrats gonna have to start getting a little bit more aggressive, because it's starting to look like y'all have accepted defeat, and instead of strategizing and having an actual game plan and an actual like passion for what's happening, the adversity as a country that we're facing right now, instead of actually having passion for that, what it looks like is that you're defeated and you're pouting. And I hate to agree with any Republican on that basis, but they're right in that regard. Y'all are pouting. The American people don't need you to sit there and pout. They need you to move. They need you to react. They need you to respond in a way that is strategic and that is not just performative. It didn't impress me at all. I agree that truthfully, I made the point yesterday that I think every Democrat in the room should have got censored. Should have got censured. Everybody should have been disruptive. Everybody should have had something to say, or made a larger point than just sitting there and waving a sign and looking upset. it wasn't impressive. And as a young voter, as somebody who tries to encourage my peers to vote, I have to have these conversations with them. Well, why they didn't do nothing? Why they didn't get up and leave with old dude? Like, why they just sitting there? I have to have those conversations with my peers, and all I can say to them is, well, unfortunately, a lot of these people are older and they still believe in the concept of statesmanship. I know there are some younger Democrats in the room, but they're only following the example of those who've been there before them, because that party still very much so is clung to the idea that appearances are everything. We have to look a certain way. Not when the actual threat of the demise of American democracy is at hand. It's not about appearances anymore. It's about time to get to work. And that it just didn't look like that they were ready to get to work.
Phil, your thoughts?
Yeah, I disagree with you guys in Charlemagne 100%. In fact, I think that your version of that famous Michelle Obama expression is your version. What you're advocating is when they go low, we go low. This thing started with that situation where Joe Wilson yelled out, "You lie." It was horrible. He should have been slapped down by his party. And then I agree, Boebert and Green, they should have been tossed out. Okay, but they weren't, and they should have been. But so you're saying, well, they're going to do disruptive things. They're going to do things that go against what we believe. So we'll do the same thing. All you're doing when you say do that is you're justifying the Republicans doing the same thing. Because when a guy disrupts, hey, it's all open season to disrupt. And listen, I'm 100% in favor of the Democrats standing up to Trump, but in a meaningful gesture. Okay. For example, as I mentioned on our last podcast, don't vote to. I'm for them shutting down the government, because they need Democratic votes to keep the government. This is how serious I believe our democracy is a threat. So I'm not minimizing that, but to say we're going to be disruptive and we're really go against what the norms that we believe. I couldn't disagree more. All you're doing is legitimizing what those other folks did.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that, Phil. I do. I think it should be taken into consideration, but I think all those days are over with. I've been saying it for years. I'll keep saying it. MAGA declared war. The Republicans, the people behind the Republican Party declared war a long time ago. And I think there's a lot of Democrats. The Democrats have been stepping up. They've been vocal. They've been in the streets. They've been marching. They've been trying to make this way into different government federal buildings that have been shut down by Doge or Trump or whatever. They've been doing it, but this was a missed opportunity. It was a missed opportunity. If every Democrat and their guests had gotten up,
if they all walked out, it would have no impact.
If they would have walked out, it would have had a huge impact because it would have been
on who? To other Democrat? On who?
Yeah, to other Democrats potentially. Yeah, to other Democrats, it would have gave them like,
and
hey,
where
listen,
do we start?
somebody
What
is
about
stepping up.
Physical violence? Do we start that? Because a lot of these South American banana.
But we're not
republics,
talking about physical violence, though, Phil. We're just talking about.
Okay, so
we're talking about what did the Democrats do in this moment, and they blew an opportunity.
Just don't complain the next time Marjorie Taylor Greene yells, because you're saying it's okay. We're going to do it too.
Well, she did it. She's going to do that anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But she should have been stopped and thrown out.
But she wasn't, and she's going to do that anyway, Phil.
Again, because she violates the rules and the decorum, we're going to do the same thing. Okay?
Yeah. They should.
Every Democrat
in the name of trying to preserve American democracy, absolutely, it's time to be disruptive.
Yeah.
Every Democrat should have told their guests before they came.
When Biden was in office, I'll guarantee you, the Republicans. Maybe I don't agree with them, but the Republicans had the same attitude toward Biden that we have toward Trump. Okay.
I don't think it's the same attitude.
Well, okay. You don't trust them. They say the same thing about you. Okay. Once you start saying, okay, now we disagree. Once we disagree severely, though they disagreed severely. So now it's all open. That's where we are.
That's where we are.
I don't think. Look, here's what I would.
That's where we're gonna have to stay. If every Democrat who invited a guest should have told their guests beforehand, if things go down in a certain manner, we're all walking out. And if you don't agree with that, then you're not going to be able to be my guest here. This was a made-for-TV moment where millions of people are potentially watching. You don't get all these opportunities. And the moment they disrespected Al Green, They all should have
They
gotten up.
didn't disrespect. He
They
disrespected.
disrespected
They
that
didn't
man.
disrespect
They
him.
disrespected that man. He was
No,
simply
they did not.
exercising his
He should
First
have been
Amendment right
thrown
to
out.
speech. He was simply
No.
exercising his First Amendment right to speech. And even furthermore, he represents tens, if not hundreds of
Okay,
thousands of
so you're
people
saying that
as
if
an
somebody
elected
gets up
official.
and starts yelling, you're saying that it's disrespectful to toss him out. If somebody
I'm
gets up,
saying
Phil,
that
let me
if
ask
we
you a
have the
question.
precedents, hold on, I'm saying that since we have the precedents, as you said earlier, with Margie Taylor Greene and Joe Wilson and Lauren Boebert, who are speaking out, and they didn't get censored,
no, they're
there was
not just
no
speaking
reason
out. They're
whatsoever for
breaking the
Al Green to
rules.
get
They're breaking
censored.
the rules.
Let me
So
finish.
were
There
they?
was
So
no
were
reason for Al Green to be censored whatsoever. This was a
No. I
power
don't agree
move.
with the censor. That was going too
This,
far. I don't agree with the
this,
censor. I'm talking about tossing him out.
yeah,
I
this
think the
was a
censor was
power
over
move.
the top. The
He was
censor has
not
been
over the
used
top. He
historically
was
for the
not
word.
over the top at all. This was
Oh,
a power move. This was Speaker Mike
so
Johnson
you're
using
agree with
his
the censor? Is that
legislative
what you're saying?
power
You
over
agree with the
Democrats.
censor? Yeah.
And for Democrats to sit there, it's almost as if they were just accepting his
If you were
authority
the
like
chair,
children.
you would have let him just yell. You'd let anybody yell whatever they want. If you were the chair, the speaker, is that what you
He
would
would have
do?
talked for a little bit and he would have sat down and that would have been it. That's what they should have done, period. Nothing more than that.
also Al was not the only one standing up yelling stuff. Like, let's not act like he was so out of the order of what was
Anybody who
happening. He
does
was
it
not
should
the
be
only
tossed
guy
out.
yelling
Anybody
stuff.
should.
He was not the only one standing up making gestures. He was not the only one yelling out stuff as Trump was
Well,
talking.
then
People
the
from the
others should have been
Republican
tossed
side were
out
doing the
too.
exact same thing, and nothing happened to them though. Phil, that's the
Here-
point
well,
that's
Well,
being
well,
okay,
well,
made.
but then that's
here's what I
Nothing
would
happened to them.
don't.
here's what I would say. Here's what I would say about what Phil is saying is in practice and in practicality, what Phil is saying is 100% correct. Under normal rules, under normal decorum, if you were disruptive in the way that Marjorie Taylor Greene was, the dude who shouted "You lie," as Al Green was, you should be tossed out under normal rooms of decorum, under normal rules of decorum in that chamber. When the Democrats had the gavel, they should have thrown the Republicans out, just like Mike Johnson did to Al Green, to send a message, but they didn't. Again, my point, the sign of weakness that Democrats show time and again, that Republicans don't have a problem pulling the trigger on. And this is what Phil is missing here, and what I'm saying about the times that we're in. Donald, as I think, as Raven said, we are living in Donald Trump's America, and one of the appeals that Donald Trump has with those who follow him is he don't give a rip. He presents this strong man exterior that says, "I'm not going to take the BS, and if you come with some BS, I'm going to deal with you." He's saying, if you're going to do protests that I don't agree with at the colleges, you out of there. If you teach DEI, you're not getting no money. These are bully strongman tactics, whether you like them or not. This is what he's creating, and a lot of people like that. And when you are playing in a game where one side, is not playing by the rules, and in fact, they've even bribed the officials in the game to the point where the officials are not even holding them accountable for the rules. You can't continue to be on the opposite team and try to play by the rules when nobody else, including the people who are supposed to be policing the rules, aren't playing the rules. You're
Well,
only
by
setting
that
yourself up.
philosophy, I think you're saying that back in the '60s, the civil rights
They did.
protesters.
It was
No, no,
called
no,
civil
no. Listen
disobedience,
to me.
Phil. It
They
was
should
called
have attacked
civil.
the police.
Phil, let me finish. It was
I'll wait
called
till you
civil.
finish.
It was called civil disobedience. Everything that was done during, well, not everything, but most of the things done during the civil rights movement broke the
No,
laws.
you're missing the
Sitting at a
point. You're
lunch
missing the
counter
point.
as wait, Phil, be
I'll
quiet,
let
man.
you
Let me get this
finish. You
out. Let me
finish.
get this
You
out.
finish. Go
Sitting
ahead.
at a lunch counter broke the rules, right? But black protesters sat at white lunch counters and got beaten and got arrested by the police. If they had just followed the rules, as you suggested, during an era where the rules didn't make sense and were unjust, and you had unjust people executing, we'd still be living in Jim Crow. Going by your philosophy, Phil, just play by the rules. These are not the times where the rules are going to, you need people who are willing to stand up and even sometimes violate the rules in the interest of justice. And I think that's what Al Green was trying to do. He was saying, I'm not going to sit here and be silent while this man gets up here and lies and says that 300-year-old people are still getting Social Security. Let that go out to a national audience unchallenged. Come on. I saw somebody in the chat talking about, yeah, the Democrats was talking tough on some program that I have never even heard of. Nobody is watching that, but you got millions of people who are watching this joint session of Congress. That is your time to send the message. People ain't watching the posts. People have cut that off and they go on to bed. They ain't watching for 2 or 3 hours after the fact. The pundits sit down and do the post breakdown. You got one shot in that chamber to send your message, and the Democrats look weak.
Go ahead, Phil.
I'm 100% favor of civil disobedience. What I would have been impressed with is if Green and others, Democrats, went to say one of these offices where these Doge people are just ripping them apart and reading everybody's Social Security information. That I have no problem with that kind of civil disobedience. I'm fine with civil disobedience there. What I am saying is, when you're talking about a presidential address, if you basically, what you guys are saying is, well, they did it, they interrupted, so we're going to interrupt. The reason I bring up the civil rights thing, civil disobedience, no problem there. But if you're going to do the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, which is what you're saying, then the civil rights protesters, when the police beat them, they should have beat the police.
They would have been, they would
have been well within their right.
Defending yourself.
So you guys agree the civil rights protesters should have attacked the police?
I'm not talking about in an overt, like, to try to compare like J6 or whatever to the civil rights. See, these are the types of bad.
January 6th wasn't compared. It wasn't civil disobedience. It was just a violent attack.
That's what I'm saying. So to say like, because J6 protesters beat police, like Democrats should beat police who are beat.
That's what you're saying.
That's not what I'm saying. That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying. That's not what I'm saying.
What's being said is that when you are dealing with a bully,
when you're dealing with what he did is because Marjorie Taylor Greene did the same thing. That's your justification.
No.
What's being said, Phil, is when you are dealing with a bully, if you are having, I'm hoping that as a parent, y'all have had conversations with y'all kids about how to deal with a bully. The conversation that I had growing up dealing with somebody who picked on me in school was, you do the right thing enough times to say that I did the right thing. But after a while, certain bullies don't get it when you do the right thing. And so you have to respond in a way that your bully understands. If you keep putting your hands on me, it's gonna get to a place where I'm not gonna be able to continue not breaking the rules. I will tell the teacher as many times as I think is appropriate.
I think you guys are confusing breaking the rules
before I respond in a way that's gonna actually solve this problem. Some bullies don't learn until you put hands on them. That's just the reality, Phil. And so if that is what that's what the America we're in right now. We are dealing with a bully that does not understand until they get put hands on. That's what we're dealing with right now. You might not want to realize that, or you might not want to say that for what that is, but that's where we are, Phil. That's where we are. He is quite literally dismantling our government as we speak.
Yeah, if
we cannot afford to be nice right now.
Strength. The Democrats have to do a better job of projecting strength, and there are many different ways that you can do it. The meek, docile, sit back approach that Democrats are trying to project these days is not what's projecting strength. We're talking about winning an election. You got to rally your base in the same way that Donald Trump is rallying his base. And what the Democratic base is saying to those, look at their approval ratings. The Democrats' approval ratings, you cannot argue with this. Even amongst Democrats is incredibly low. Their approval rating sucks. And so what that is telling the leadership is that what you're doing, this we go high when they go low approach, is not resonating with your base. People are saying that we need to see more demonstrations of
so the key is to play to the base, not necessarily right and wrong. It's play to the base.
If the base is applauding, if the base is applauding what Al Green did, and they're saying that the Democrats who sat there with their little signs and pink shirts look weak, if you continue to do that, you're not going to excite your base. in the way that is going to
So
be
Donald
necessary
Trump
to
is
win the
right because he always
midterms or to
excites
beat
his
Donald
base. You're
Trump.
agreeing with Trump's approach. You're not saying do what's right
I'm
or right.
agreeing with
You're
what the
saying
base. I'm
play
agreeing
the
with what.
base.
Hey,
That's your
look, Phil. At
justification, like he does.
the bottom line is this, Phil. The bottom line is this: you need voters to win elections, and if your voters are saying you weak, then it don't matter what you think, Phil. It matters
Yeah.
what the
So
voters think.
you're adopting Donald Trump's policy
Hey,
or
hey,
his
look, man,
tactics.
look. Hey,
Go
if you
ahead.
want to, hey, whatever it takes, if you are on the side of liberals, if you are on the side of Democrats, whatever it takes to get your base excited within reason. I'm
Then
saying
don't
within
criticize
reason.
Trump for
And
his
and
rhetoric.
the
Don't
type of
criticize
civil
Trump.
disobedience we're talking about is
Has
not
nothing to do with
January
anything.
6th, it's not beating police officers, but it's projecting strength in a way that says to people, we are fighting and not trying to normalize this guy. That is what it's going to take to rally up your base. And yes, that may mean taking some unconventional approaches to how you do this
Just like
that
Trump
don't
does.
follow
Just
the
like he
normal
rallies
rules
his
of
base,
performance.
right? Just
Yeah,
like
yeah, on
Trump.
some levels, yeah, just like Trump does, and it seems to
Okay.
be working.
That
You know,
then
look,
we're in
any
agreement, and we just don't. We may disagree, but we're acknowledging the
And this is
fact
why
that
Democrats lose forever. It's why Democrats lose.
what fact now, Phil?
Democrats lose because they won't do what is necessary to win an election. Republicans will do whatever is necessary. I'm not saying you stoop to any level, but your voters
how
are
about
telling
line?
you,
How about just line?
they're not seeing enough fight. So it
How
don't
about
matter what
line?
you think, Phil. It don't matter what the Democrats in office think. They are going to lose if voters feel like they look weak. And right now, the
They look
approval
weak.
ratings and everything about the Democrats says that voters, they look weak to the voters, and that Trump is running roughshod over them and the country, and Democrats ain't doing a damn
You know
thing.
what?
Now, you don't have to like that. Tell it to the voters, Phil. Maybe you need to be out talking to the voters.
Kevin, I like it. Are you ready to admit that Joe Biden missed an opportunity when he invited Trump? And what did I say back then? We live in different times. You're not going to get an opportunity to have Trump in front of you. He should have ran him down on all the crazy stuff that Trump said right then and there for the very reasons you saying. It's the same thing.
Yeah, no,
People
I've
want to
come
see
around. I mean,
passion.
I have. I'll admit that I've come around because of what I've seen,
Yeah,
in
it's
recent
real.
months, and it's sort of this recognition that, again,
The game has changed. It's
I
a different
started my
game.
comments by saying, "Hey, I'm all for decorum and the rules," and I even acknowledge that in theory, Phil is right, but that is not the times that we are living in now, and there has to be some type of adjustment because the Michelle Obama "we go high, they go low" has not worked. It didn't work.
No,
It's not rallying your base and
you know
exciting your
why she
base
said
in the
that
way
though,
that
because they
you
were
need
black.
to win. And so you've got to, I think if Democrats are smart, they've got to make an adjustment. And I'm not saying you got to be like Donald Trump, reckless with your language. I said there are many ways that you can project strength and show strength, but
Right.
people are
Through unity.
looking for resistance. They're looking for resistance right now. And what is going to excite your base is a Democratic Party that is showing resistance to
We're
what
showing
Donald
unity.
Trump is doing right now. And
Right.
right now, it looks like there is no resistance. It looks like Donald Trump right now is doing whatever he wants to do, and the Democrats are MIA.
Right.
And
It
that, and
looks
that's
that way,
what
but
I
the
think that's what
Democrats are
people
out
are
there.
responding to.
It was a missed opportunity to show unity. Unity. So, for instance, and for anybody that might be on a team with me, just know this: if we go to the club together and they kick you out, I'm leaving with you. I'm not going to sit in
Absolutely.
there and dance and take a drink and he'll get I'm going with you. You kick my partner out, I'm going with you. Had I been there as an elected official, I would have walked out right there with them. Period. And I would have explained to my voters why I was doing it. It's called unity. You don't kick my partner out for some nonsense and think I'm gonna sit there quietly. I'm just gonna sit there and listen to you lecture and lie to me. It ain't happening. It's not happening. So props to Green. And you had 10 Democrats that actually signed on to censor Al Green. Who are these people? I could only think that maybe they might be in congressional districts where it's very competitive or something like that, because I saw one Democrat talking about it and I'm like, bro, you don't even know what time it is. That's the difference between Democrats and Republicans. No matter what the move is, whether it's cruel and unusual, whether it's the right thing they do, they all move together. When they do interviews, they all say the same thing, whether it's a lie or not. And that is still what is missing in some elements, some part of the Democrat Party. And they missed a big opportunity, because the headlines would have been every Democrat walks out. It would have been images of half the chamber with nobody with seats in it. That's powerful. That's the kind of stuff that kind of breaks through it and shows up on your timeline. That's the kind of things that make people think like, oh man, these Democrats are serious. And that's what people want to see.
And that's what brings people out to come vote. That right there, that sense of unity, that sense of urgency when it comes to handling the issues of the American people. Republicans got that. They don't have to question that. They know that no matter who is talking, like Nathan just said, no matter who's talking, no matter what news outlet, if you're talking to a Republican, they gonna all have the same script every single time. We cannot say that as Democrats, and that's the problem. That's the issue. And I'm not even saying, because I get Phil's point. I actually remember the conversation that we were all having when we were talking about the responsibility of the Democratic Party to maintain dignity, to maintain decorum. I was on Kevin's side. I distinctly remember that conversation. I was on Kevin's side because I do vote the way that I vote, because I believe that the Democratic Party has a better moral compass than the Republicans. I do. That's one of the main reasons I vote that way most of the time. But what I will say is we're not looking at a black and white type of thing. It's a spectrum. And on that spectrum, Democrats are they're too willing to not remove themselves from that concept of either we got to be all the way right or all the way wrong. It ain't even really an all the way right or all the way wrong thing. It's you have to be so convicted of your rightness that you're willing to do what it takes to maintain that rightness. You're willing to do what it takes to preserve that rightness. So it's not that we're saying to Democrats or Democratic running politicians that y'all gonna have to start doing dirty politics. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you're going to have to actually show up, actually do your job, actually do what people need you to do when we put you in those positions of power. Not just be up there to exude decorum and exude dignity. That's not what I voted entirely for you to do. I also voted for you to represent me. What good is decorum if you're not going to represent me? What good is dignity if you're not going to fight for me? You're gonna have to sometimes make a decision, and the decision that was made at the State of the Union address was a bad one, plain and simple.
Here's what Donald Trump is good at, and here's the opportunity that the Democrats had the other night. They had a great opportunity to steal the headlines from Donald Trump and mute the lies that he told by stealing the news cycle. Donald Trump does this very well with the Democrats. He did it very well with Joe Biden, to the detriment of Joe Biden, I think. He was able to steal through things that he would say or whatever. He would take over the news cycle away from things that, the Biden administration were doing. And the whole conversation became about what Trump said and what he was doing. And the media played on that fixation with this. Now, let me just tell you, the one thing that Democrats did that everybody was talking about the next day was Al Green. Nobody was talking about the cute little ladies in they pink and the people who was holding their signs up. No, what everybody was talking about as it pertained to the Democrats after that joint session was Al Green got kicked out. Now, here's the sad part about that. Because it was just Al Green, even within those headlines, like they were able to minimize it. They were able to kind of caricature Al Green and sort of make fun with him. Oh, he's the old black man with the ponytail and the cane. They're able to pick on him and pick out certain things to try to minimize his protest because it's just one person. So my point is if you had a more, and I think what Nathan and Raven have been saying, that if you have a more unified plan and if more people walk out, then you can't just kind of caricature and make fun of Al Green, and you dominate more of the news cycle and the news conversation the next day when you talk about multiple Democrats walking out, not one at a time, as some people left during the course of it. It doesn't send the same message as a united front does. And that's the criticism that I have of the Democrats. You know, the docile approach just kind of said, you got to make a statement, like it or not. Al Green made a statement. Like I said, I think he knew what he was doing when he stood up and
he said as much.
was prepared to take those consequences. The Democrats, again, want to try to come in with this weak, soft approach that nobody is going to really be talking about. If you're going to take the headlines, take the headline. Al Green took the headlines for whatever you think about it. And so that's the type of stuff Democrats have to be thinking about, is how do we, for better or worse, take the narrative and control the narrative. They had the opportunity to do that in that joint session and did not take the opportunity to do that.
So a couple of days later, Al Green was censored. And for folks who don't know, essentially it's like a slap on the wrist. He goes on his congressional record that he was censored by his colleagues, and he doesn't lose any committee or he's not going to be suspended with pay.
Actually, though, historically, going back, the most famous censure was the one of Joseph McCarthy. The sad thing is that censure, actually, even though you're right, it's a technical slap, but it used to be considered a very, very serious judgment that the majority of the Congress or the House would censure you. That's why McCarthy, that led to his demise. But the sad thing is, as far as censure goes, and I blame the Republicans for this, they censured Adam Schiff, who I think is one of the most principled guys, just because he made some statements about Trump and whatever, and they censored him, which was terrible. And basically what we're doing is what they started is minimizing they're what's the word? They're diluting the impact. It used to be if you were censored, it was a true disgrace.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
So I think we need New Jack Democrats to deal with New Jack Republicans. This is what happened a couple of days later. Matter of fact, it was the next day when.
Can I throw one other point in on this?
Let me just play this clip real quick.
This
so this was the Democrats the next day when Al Green was officially censored. Check this out.
The House will come to order. The House will come to order. Shh. Will Representative Green present himself to the will? By its adoption of House Resolution 189, the House has resolved that Representative Al Green be censured, that Representative Al Green forthwith present himself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure, and that Representative Al Green be censured with public reading of this resolution by the Speaker.
So at some point, I didn't really quite pick it up. At some point, they start singing, "We shall overcome." This is what they were doing. "We shall overcome." And I'm thinking, these folks just don't understand what they're up against. They don't stand a chance against MAGA. If this is your attitude in a moment like that, unfortunately, they don't stand a chance.
But this just goes to the old mentality. Like when you think about, if you watch during that joint Congress, the camera kept panning on Nancy Pelosi, and I'm looking at all of these old Democrats that, quite frankly, probably should have been retired a while ago, and this is part of the issue about why we need term limits in Congress. If they're good enough for the president, they ought to be good enough for Congress and everybody else. You're not going to be these lifelong politicians. Get some fresh blood up in there. Nothing against "We shall overcome." That is a great part of our history. It's a great part of our Black legacy, the civil rights movement, but it is a representation of a bygone era and the type of tactics that many older people still want to use in today's environment. We are in a social media, technology, AI, as you said, Nathan, New Jack. This is a New Jack politics that we are dealing with in these days, and you cannot be falling back on these old school processes and thought activities like singing "We shall overcome." That is not going to hit your young demographic that you need to be trying to get. I'd have felt better if they'd have came with some Kendrick Lamar or something like,
right.
They not like us.
That's going to be relevant to your young voters these days. That's going to get folks fired up. but circling around. And the other piece of that, and then I'll let others speak. The other piece of that is, where was that at the joint session?
Thank
Like,
you.
why are you going, like, you're showing up now that they trying to censor the man, and you're going to surround, and I apologize, the video was kind of small, I couldn't see, but it looked like you're going to try to rally and surround the man after he done been thrown out and they're getting ready to censor him. Now you want to surround him and sing "We Shall Overcome." Where was that at the joint session? So again, this is the type of stuff that makes like that look weak. Even that look weak. And I'm somebody who you would call a bridge between the older generation and the young generation. Even to me, that looked old and weak.
I bet you their campaign aides told them, you should not be singing this song. If you're going to sing a song, sing a Kendrick Lamar song. They not like us. That would have been more relevant to the times and would have sent a better message. But go ahead, Raven.
I think it was the "We Shall Overcome" moment was pointless at that point. Why are we doing this now when y'all could have easily got up and left with him the day before? Why are we doing this day late, dollar short protesting? This is not effective. Like, outside of using an old Negro spiritual to make a point, like this is 1960 or something. Why are we doing this now? What is the purpose of doing this after the fact? There should have been something done in the moment. That would have been a lot more impactful. I can guarantee you there's nobody of millennial age or Gen Z age who cared that they sung "We Shall Overcome" at his sentence. Like, nobody cared. It did nothing. It impressed no one. It might have reminded us of movements past, but it didn't give us any inspiration or any desire to be part of anything currently. It was pointless. It was meaningless. It was more performance. Young voters are sick of performance. I made a point yesterday, and I love Jasmine Crockett. I do. I love Jasmine Crockett. She is somebody who is around my age who I think is doing a great job in Washington right now. But sis, I don't want to watch you doing TikTok dances. I don't want to watch you. And she did a TikTok dance to a Kendrick Lamar song. I don't want to see that. I am 32 years old. I am at an age where most people my age have children, are paying bills, are married, are switching careers, are looking at their 401k and figuring out how they're actually going to have access to it when they become retirement age. We don't care about you doing TikTok dances. We want to see movement, actual real work being done by our elected officials. So if you're going to make a statement, do it in the times that it matters, in the moment, not after the fact. Otherwise, you playing in my face, and I don't appreciate it.
You know, it's funny you say that because I saw that video and my initial thought talking about Jasmine Crockett, and she's kind of like doing the Kendrick Lamar thing with her staff behind her, and I thought, no,
I'm not impressed. I'm
it
not
did.
impressed.
It didn't hit. I'm like this. I mean, I think performance is a part of politics, right? But that was the wrong performance, right? Because all Trump does is perform. All these tariffs and stuff. One day is 25%. The markets crash. Then he backtracks. That's all performance for MAGA, and they love it. So performance is a part of it. But when I saw that video, I thought, no. You know, I would much rather a video where you're breaking down the particulars of what Doge is doing, right? And I see people doing that. I've seen her do that. But I thought that particular video, nah.
It's an insult. It's an insult, and it's bad political consultation that politicians are getting about how to try to reach different demographics. You don't have to downplay or play young people down like they're dumb by trying to do hip TikTok video dances and all of these other things that you think are going to catch their attention and appeal to them. All you got to do is be on the platforms where they're at. Talk to the influencers that they listen to. Have the influencers interview you and break it down. This is what Donald Trump does. Like, yes, I agree with you, Nathan. It is performative in terms of the content that he speaks, but he doesn't change up his demeanor, or you don't see Donald Trump. Like, the only time you see him dancing was where he did the little YMCA thing at one of his rallies, but he ain't on TikTok trying to do dance moves and all of that. Wherever you see Donald Trump, he's pretty much the same. The liar in chief saying whatever he says, but he's not trying to switch up to be something for a particular audience. And that's what these politicians need to learn. You ain't got to trick it up. Just be yourself. Just be in the spaces where young people are, answering the questions and breaking it down in the way that it needs to be breaking down. But they get this bad advice from these political consultants who convince them that this is the way that you have to reach young people. And it's insulting to young people, and it's degrading to the politicians who have to do it because you look like a fool.
Yeah, I just thought it was tone deaf. It just missed the mark to considering what's going on. So I don't know where she got the idea. But keeping with this for a minute, there was something else. There was a lot of stuff that happened, including attacks on Social Security. But Democrats were being criticized, at least by Republicans, because they didn't stand for a 13-year-old cancer survivor. Did you see this guy, little dude? Apparently, sure,
Can I say something
sure,
about
sure,
it
sure.
before
Go
we
ahead.
get off the subject, please? It sounds like what you guys are saying is we need to kind of, in some ways, be like Donald Trump. We got to motivate the base. Sounds like that's what you're
Well,
saying.
don't you always?
Motivate the base. And
Isn't that where you start?
no, Hitler
No, I'm just talking about any
motivated
political
his
Phil is
base.
campaign.
confusing. Phil is confusing tactics with. So if I say you got to motivate the base, every elected
No, I'm
official,
talking about tactics. No,
better be
all right, you
trying
guys
to
don't want to let me
motivate
finish. That's
their
okay. Go
base.
ahead.
Let him finish,
That's
Kevin.
okay.
Okay.
No, go
Okay,
ahead,
You don't
Phil.
want to let
go
me
ahead,
finish.
Phil.
Go ahead,
Go ahead.
finish. Go ahead. If the goal is to kind of in some ways imitate Trump and motivate the base, why don't we do this? Why don't we start using he's very effective at using ugly rhetoric like poisoning the blood, and he's very effective at targeting groups
So
like
this is
immigrants and things like that. And of course,
yeah. But
may I finish? And of
no,
course,
no,
Go
because
ahead,
Phil, you're
go ahead,
you go. You're not
misrepresenting
gonna
what
let me
is
finish.
being
Go ahead.
said, and it's hard. It's kind of. I feel kind of
No,
like
go ahead.
Al
You're not gonna let
Green.
me
I kind of
finish.
feel
Go
like
ahead.
Al
All right.
Green. Nathan might have
It's
to kick
okay.
me off the show because what you're doing is you're suggesting that we're saying that you need to be like Donald Trump in terms of his tactics. That's not what we're saying. We're not saying use lies, use mean-spirited language and that sort of thing, use violence. That's what you're saying. You're saying we're saying that. And I'm telling you that's not what we're saying. So the reason why I'm interrupting you is because I'm not going to continue to sit here and let you misrepresent the position that we're trying to say. There's a difference between saying that the Democrats need to be tougher, they need to fight harder, they need to convince their base that they're willing to do some things that show resistance. That's different than saying to be like Donald Trump. So stop saying that because that's not what we're saying.
And that's
Now
the
you
point that
can
I was
finish.
making earlier. We're out. Nobody is saying that Democrats have to resort to dirty politics. What we're saying is
But
show
I thought you disagree with
compassion.
Michelle Obama. You say I said that what you're saying is they go low, we go low, and but isn't that
No,
you guys
I
say
didn't say
yeah, you're
yeah.
agreeing with
What
that. You
I
don't
did
agree with
say is
Michelle
that
Obama.
the implication that comes the
You want to go
implication.
low.
No, I didn't.
You
The
said it.
implication that comes with
Oh, I
can
thought
I
you
finish
guys
now,
said
Phil? Can I
that's not
finish?
going to work
The
anymore.
implication that comes with saying when they go low, we go high has always been when they do the reprehensible, we have to walk on eggshells to maintain decorum and dignity. We can't do anything that represents any level of aggression. That's typically the implication that comes with that kind of statement. And what me, Nathan, and Kevin are saying is that is not going to work in Trump's America. We cannot just idly sit by and prioritize being docile, inconsistent, ununified, and lacking any sort of aggression or passion, period. That's not going to work. None of us have sat here and said we're gonna have to lie. We're gonna have to play dirty politics. We're gonna have to be reprehensible. We're not saying any of that. You're saying that.
What are you saying, Phil? I want to hear what Phil is actually saying. What are you saying, Phil?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm saying is, and I think you guys know how I feel about everything that Trump is doing. I've been pretty, I think, outspoken about that. But let's talk about the difference between what is performative and what is actually standing up to him. Let's talk about that difference. I would respectfully say that walking out, I don't care if it's one or the whole party, I would say that is performative. It really doesn't change anything. It doesn't threaten Trump. It doesn't, that doesn't threaten him. It doesn't do anything to affect his policies. But what I am saying, I'm agreeing with what Steve Schmidt said. If the Democrats really, really want to they want to stop this stuff. They want to stop firing the inspector generals who are supposed to root out waste. They want to stop letting the Doge people read our tax returns and Social Security numbers, and stop closing down agencies, even if they should be, but Congress should do it. I agree. What is happening now is so extreme that what needs to be done, as Steve Schmidt said, is shut down the government. Don't let them do that anymore. That is extreme. And I'll guarantee you the Democrats are probably going to hesitate. You know why? Because they're afraid that they will get blamed in the next election for doing it. But that is a much more serious and powerful step than walk out, I'm objecting. What I'm saying is much more powerful and much less
Here's
performative.
where I'm going to disagree with Phil here, is because the joint session speech is performative in nature. So when we're on a stage that is performative, guess what? I'm going to perform. So I agree with what I agree with.
Do you agree shutting down the government
now?
is effective?
I had to let you speak. And so let me get it out.
Okay. All right.
So we are on a stage of performative theater already, where Donald Trump is up there on the main stage. So I don't disagree with what Phil is saying about other things Democrats need to be doing. Yes, my argument is they need to be doing all of that. But since we are on a theatrical stage, which is all that joint address to Congress is, then Democrats, if you on the stage in the theater and you got an opportunity to perform before the national audience, then put on your best performance. Donald Trump certainly was. He thought he was on stage at the Funny Bone. I mean, this dude
Nicole, I need somebody to stick up for me. Nicole, come on, have a heart, will you?
Yeah, I think
show a little compassion. I'm appealing to Nicole. Okay,
I love you.
I have a feeling I'm not going to get the. I have a feeling I'm not going to get the compassion I'm looking for. But
don't give it to him, see, Nicole. He wouldn't say me the other. He wouldn't show me no compassion the other day when me and Nathan was going back and forth. Well, no help for Phil. Leave that brother out there on the island. Leave him on Gilligan's Island today.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
you know,
look up
the
the
main
root
one
of
that
bitterness
says
in
when
the
they
Bible.
go low, we go to
That's
hell.
what you
So
got.
I don't know what I could do for you, Chesterfield, at this moment, but I'm all for the smoke and the advocacy. I understand what you're saying and your attempt to compare this to the way Trump operates, but we do have to appeal to our base. Every elected official should appeal to their base to begin with. And so there is a difference when we're talking about appealing to your base and using, old Southern strategies to, arouse them and make them want to come out and vote, instead of just speaking to the issues and the things that, really matters to people and manipulating people and lying up people. But at the same time, the biggest argument for Democrats is that they don't fight. And so in that moment, it was needed. The advocacy was needed. Al Green, he stood on business, and I hate that he walked out of there alone. I do agree with Charlemagne the God. Like, it should have been some.
Nicole, I pleaded with you, and you let me down.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Continue.
But
No,
I understand what you're saying.
It's still okay. We can overcome this rift.
You need Kevin Gordon with you today.
I was listening. I was trying to because I don't like nobody being outnumbered either.
Gordon, I'm in big trouble.
Yeah, I mean the way I look at it is real simple. Like, the Democrats and Republicans are at war, right? For lack of a better war. And in a war, you got multiple planes of it. You got the military war, you got the psyops, the war propaganda. And so it's the same thing. So I don't think it's either or, it's both, right? Sometimes they got to perform. I think the way that Kevin put it to me sounds accurate. It's already a performative environment, so they performed. But at the same time, you're doing all the things that Phil talked about as well. It's all necessary, especially in the social media world that we live in, because you got to grab people's attention. That's very, very important. For any political movement, you got to grab people's attention on social media, right, wrong, or whatever. It's just where we are. So, but good stuff, man. I like to, and Phil, I'm gonna say it again, man. If we go to the club together and you do something crazy and they kick you out, I'm walking out right with you, buddy. I'm not gonna sit in there.
And Nathan, I'm gonna double down. If you and I go to a club together and you do something, you get thrown out. I'll probably stay in the club, but we're still good friends. We're still close.
Well, at least I know where I stand. At least I know where I stand. I was gonna bring this part up right here. The Dems are getting slammed because they didn't stand for this 13-year-old cancer survivor, and he's put out a bunch of like videos now. The Trump administration, I'm glad they did it. They did one good thing, although I don't think they did it for good reasons. But if it brings some sunshine to this young man's life, they made him an honorary Secret Service member, which was like his dying wish. I thought it was great. The Democrats didn't stand for it, and I understand why. They probably thought he was being used as a prop, as he is. As we speak, through Doge and other mechanisms, they're cutting cancer research and doing a whole bunch of really terrible stuff that's going to harm working families. Then they want to trot this kid out like, hey, Donald Trump loves the kids. But what do you make of people saying that the Democrats were wrong to not stand for this 13-year-old? Were they wrong?
So this is where kind of I think the politics come in of this, because everybody does it. I mean, you see it on both sides. Every Republican and Democrat brings different people to these addresses that they want to highlight, that talks about their policies or something, or feel good stories or things of that nature. So I'm not going to ding Trump for that, because everybody does it. Republicans and Democrats both do it. But I think what the Democrats found themselves in is sort of this catch-22 in some of these cases. Again, you're in this position of where if I acknowledge anything that he does, am I normalizing him in some way, shape, or form? And there's also more to it, whereas just like what you said, here you are highlighting this young man, but at the same time you're cutting, funding for the NIH and cancer research for a kid who was, pediatric cancer research is a big part of that. And here you are highlighting this kid in this battle while cutting his funding. I can't stand for that. Even as much as I would want to stand for the kid, I can't stand for what you're doing behind the scenes. So I think the Democrats found themselves in a catch-22 on some of these things. If I had been them, because of the nature of that story and the kid, I probably would have stood. I think they did applaud. They may not have stood, but I think they at least applauded in their seats. So at least there was that. But I think they found themselves in these weird sort of political catch-22s on some of these things. I think it would have been nice had they stood up. I understand all the reasons why they didn't. They totally didn't not acknowledge it. I think, as I said, I think many of them did applaud from their seats. So obviously, I think this is just another opportunity politically to get a dig in on the Democrats and make them look more like sore losers, as if they were throwing a tantrum.
Right. I feel like it's damn if you do, damn if you don't type situation. And again, it just seemed like in the face of hypocrisy, like you said, they're literally cutting cancer research. And then you have this young, incredible young man here using him as a prop. It makes me think of the situation in Ohio, where there was a young person who was killed in a bus accident by an immigrant. And the Trump administration wanted to use him as a prop. And the family said, no, please don't use the death of my son in any political arena. Like, that's not what we want his memory for. And so for a lot of these individual families, especially like there's another one, I can't think of her name, but it was a law put into it was allowed in her name and I guess it's for immigrants, and basically they
Lake and Riley,
right?
Lake and Riley,
and basically it almost eliminate due process. Like, people can immigrants can be locked up indefinitely, and so it's almost kind of like a supersedes of a person's rights in this country. But this is going to be in her name, and unfortunately, impact a lot of people. Probably already is, but they could have. A lot of them did clap. They could have stood. I think in that exception, if the overall goal was to not stand for anything, then stand for nothing. But I saw some people stand up for Melania when he introduced the first lady, and so if you can stand up for her, then this young kid who has absolutely nothing to do with anything else, just to show support and to that family. I mean, that's going to sit with them for a while. And so if you're talking about appealing to voters and possible new voters or whatever, at least don't make it seem like it's personal toward them.
I'm going to make a promise. I'm going to make a promise, and you guys hold me to this. If I am ever elected president, and I give that State of the Union or whatever it is, I promise I am not going to bring any dying kids. I'm not going to bring in any wounded ICE agents. I'm not going to bring in any, what do you call it, survivors of my dad, this and that, because the whole thing it just makes me sick. So I promise you, I'm not going to do any of that stuff.
You know, I
Are
think
you
the
gonna?
Democrats who are really concerned about some of the cuts, and in particular, I hear a lot of talk about the cancer research cuts that Doge and Trump are making. They should use this example against them. Okay, so you care about this kid? Okay, great. Well, then we need to make sure that we don't make these cuts to pediatric research when it comes to cancer. I mean, it's politics. You know, they made a move. Okay, great. I get it. It was a performance. You can bring people on. It makes Trump look good, makes him look like a human. He really cares. Well, how much do you really care? Let's put some money behind it, right? Because trotting somebody out there doing a situation like that is one thing, but there's a morality in terms of your budget, right? Like what you really care about and what you pay for, what you make a priority as a legislative body in terms of your budget says a lot about you. So if I was a Democrat, I would use it against them to try to make sure we keep support for cancer research. But we'll see what happens. I've been inviting people for the last couple of shows to enter the show, right? So you can come on as a guest, and we've got someone named Phil Clark backstage. You guys cool with bringing Phil on? Be the first time we've done it, so
Well,
we'll see
If
how
we
it
could get
goes.
some help,
hold it. Hold it before this? Does he agree with me? That's the
I,
question.
I, he is completely unvetted. I don't know who Phil is, but let's try
That
it.
makes me feel a little shaky.
Hey,
All
you
right, give the
you
guy
ain't the
a
only one.
chance.
So let's
Give him a
bring Phil
chance.
Clark on. I think he's just on with audio. Phil Clark, where you at, Phil? Phil, can you hear us? Are you there?
PC.
Yo, Phil Clark, are you there? I don't have a lot of time to waste, Phil. Call us back, man, or try it again. Get your audio together or something like that, and we'll try to bring you on. So there's a link on YouTube and on Facebook. I highlighted it, so it's probably at the very top of the comment section, and you can use that to enter the show the same way you see the folks on the stage right now, the crew members. You can enter via video and or audio. So if you want to take your video off and just talk to us, you can do that. Or if you want the audio and the video to be up, you can do that as well. And
You gotta teach me how to do that because I tried to do that yesterday and I couldn't figure it out.
oh yeah, I'll show you for sure, for sure. It's a very easy way to restream. It's already got it built in. It'll allow you to do that. So just let me know, Phil. If you can hear us, you can also text me and I can respond to you. And I'll just wait and see what happens, and we'll just move forward because we don't want to stand still. So there has been some movement to pardon Derek Chauvin. Derek Chauvin is the police officer, Minneapolis police officer that killed a man, George Floyd, by putting his knee on his neck. And now you've got at least one really big social media Republican influencer, a guy by the name of Ben Shapiro, who is now leading the charge to get Trump to pardon him, which is interesting because just a few years ago, he was on the opposite side. I've got a quick clip from Instagram that I want to play for you. It's really quick, like 30 seconds. And check this out.
Full incident involving the police. And I think that once more, it is important to recognize that everyone should be on the same side of this. Right? Really, everyone should be on the same side of this. What we have seen here, and yet we are not. What we have seen here is a police officer kneeling on the neck of a black man for 4 straight minutes while he's being told by people, including the guy who is underneath his knee, that he cannot breathe. Okay, it's really, really ugly, and it's really, really bad.
That was Ben Shapiro in 2020. This is Ben Shapiro today.
President Trump should, in fact, pardon Derek Chauvin. He should. He should pardon him his federal charges. What is...
So you get the gist of it. So I don't know what's the impetus behind this switch, but apparently,
That
he's
man
kind
is
of
trying to
gaining
keep
some
his
swing.
job.
Trying to keep
That
his
man,
job.
that man trying to keep his job. That man is trying to keep his cash flow going, and that's it. And that's all. That's really it. We ain't got to dig no further. He is trying to maintain his cash flow. His party is in office right now, and they are doing everything under the sun to be as reprehensible and deplorable as possible. And so, of course, his opinion has changed. Of course, he's calling for the pardon of Derek Chauvin, who I'm not even sure technically can be pardoned because he pled guilty to a federal charge. And if I'm not mistaken, the law states that if you plead guilty to a federal charge, you cannot be pardoned.
No,
Now,
that's not true. A lot of the January 6th guys pled guilty, but what just from a legal standpoint, Trump can pardon him as this guy asked for the federal charges. He cannot pardon him on the state charges he was convicted of.
got you. So at this point, it's just until it happens, it's just a talking point, a Republican talking point that has no other purpose but to make Republicans feel better. They are still doing their winner's lap right now. Like he's only been in office. He hasn't even been in office for 100 days yet. Like they're still celebrating the fact that the Republican Party has won that office. And so we're going to see a lot of this. We're going to see a lot more ridiculous requests from the Republican Party because the man is writing executive orders like he is practicing his signature. Like we're going to continue to see this kind of ridiculous stuff. Ben Shapiro's trying to keep his cash flow going. End all be all.
Hey Nathan, did he give any reasoning behind why he was calling for the pardon? Like any type of legal, or he was just putting a hot take out there? As far as we know,
knowing Ben Shapiro, he probably did. Although
he did, I looked it up. He claimed, not to interrupt, but I just
go ahead,
wasn't in that thing. Oh yeah, he said that he was blaming on the atmosphere, meaning the jury's minds were poisoned because of all the press. That was his point.
Yeah,
same thing that J.D. Vance said, right? Like all the bad stuff he said about Donald Trump being like Hitler, it was the mainstream media's fault, right? Yeah, they somehow did something to his brain and made him think negatively about Donald Trump, and it wasn't fair. I'm so tired of that excuse. But go ahead, a voice of reason.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, it's not beyond Donald Trump's.
Good timing, Phil.
It's not beyond.
I got confused. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's not beyond the realm of belief that Donald Trump would do something like this because that's kind of his MO. And if he thought that there was anything in it for him politically, he absolutely would do it. I don't think that there is anything in it politically for him, just because I think the blowback from that would be so huge. I mean, I just think that is a can of worms that even Donald Trump probably wouldn't want to mess with right now in terms of releasing Chauvin. Like I think that would even be bigger than the January 6th pardons if he were to do that. I think that would ignite Black folks in a way that if he were to pardon Derek Chauvin, the man who killed George Floyd, I just think the Black response to that nationally would be so huge that I just, again, I wouldn't put anything past him, but I mean, that would be a huge development if he were to do something like that. I don't foresee that, but
Kevin,
anything's possible with him.
Like, where are you? Where have you been? This man has no bottom. Like, absolutely, he would do this. I mean, and as it gets more and more attention, why would he not? He's pardoning all these other criminals, and given the fact that they were sexual predators and everything else, domestic violence, it didn't matter. You know what I mean? And this would feed to their base. Their whole efforts right now is to stick it to the Dems. And so what better way to stick it to those Dems and those progressive than to use basically the catalyst that, was like the uprising for Black Lives Matter and everything else, to release him. They want that smoke. That's why we have neo-Nazis and on the bridge protesting and stuff. They want that smoke right now. They're running it, and they're going to do it. Don't be surprised if, because there's a bill right now to put Trump's face on $100 bill, to put his face on Mount Rushmore, and don't even be surprised if they end up doing reparations for white people, because that was something that he claimed he would like to deliver. Like, we have 4 years of him and all his tactics and everything. And who's going to stop him, boo? Who's going to stop him?
Yeah, T. Nicole, I don't. Again, I started by saying nothing is beyond him. I'm just saying that so if his intent is to set it off, like because that's all that would be. That's all that would be to me. Like that is a huge move that would set it off. Like if you do that, I think that's gonna hit black people a lot differently than pardoning January 6th rioters.
They're threatening
What
to
I'm saying is,
Medicaid.
if he does that, if he pardons that man and he lets him loose, that's gonna be a hell of a
Just so you know,
lot.
he can't let him loose because he'll be in jail for the rest of his life on the stage. But
Look,
I agree.
even
It's
the
the
I
same
think
point.
even
Same
I think
point.
even the message, even if he don't get out of jail, even the message, that's a lot. I'm telling you, that's a lot of smoke, and that will wake a lot of sleepers. There, you still got some black folks who sleep on this.
But
Trust me, that's a bear. That's a bear you don't want to poke.
He's doing what he want to do right now. What I'm trying to convey, what I see is him doing what he want to do. He's sitting up here. He got us at odds with our allies. You know what I mean? We're not the leaders of the free world anymore. Like we're standing with dictators. He's doing everything, things that people would never think this country would do, from internationally to they're talking about touching the Medicare and Medicaid. They said they wouldn't touch Social Security. It's already in a proposal, you know, and it's all on Republicans to pass this through. They don't need the Democrats to do anything. It's just a simple majority, and this goes through, and there's nothing anybody's going to be able to do about it. So, you know, they're all a bunch of lapdogs right now, enablers, and they're going to enable anything he wants right now. And so,
but they still need
pass
the midterms,
a simple pardon of Derek Chauvin. What is that compared to all the things that they're threatening to touch? They've already touched and is talking about messing with as far as people everyday lives. What is a pardon compared to the things that they are already in line of doing and doing these tariffs? You know what I mean? Like he's doing what he wants to do.
But understand this, even in doing that though, T. Nicole, he is alienating a lot of people. And again, hear what I'm saying is that politically, he would awaken. If you go back, the two things that people say that got Donald Trump ousted the last time he was in office, COVID and George Floyd. If you go back to those two instances, those were the two things that people point to, that historians and pundits point to, that said those were changing points that rallied the American people to help usher Donald Trump out the last time he had it. You got midterm elections coming up. And again, I said there are a lot of people who are asleep on the sidelines. There are a lot of black people who have been kind of coming out even halfway a little bit towards Donald Trump. And I'm saying politically, yes, I understand everything that you're saying, throwing red meat to your base and all of this type stuff. But I'm telling you, that is a racial bear that if he poked that, I'm telling you, that's a lot of, I think that's a lot of smoke. Now he may
my brother, they've already done the work. They've been doing the work since the uprising, because this whole attack on woke and everything else, it came from those actions. They are literally trying to take the history out. This is the reason why, because they saw many of their young people having empathy. And so we have to change the way they learn history in America. And we also have to demonize wokeism and everything else, and DEI and everything else. So even the funding. So all these things that's being cut, they're looking specifically for ways that, you know, organizations and groups to come together, cut your funding and everything. They're trying to cut people off at the knees. So right now, you know, they've already worked into the minds that being woke, being an activist, you know, is a negative. And so I don't know if you're going to have that same uprising before, at least from white folks, young white males.
I disagree.
You know what I mean?
This is different.
I mean,
DEI is different.
Right now, you see how this
Chauvin.
guy flipped? He was just talking the one way, and then like in a couple of years, he flipped. His mind has changed. They feel like they're the victim.
his mind ain't changed. I agree with Raven. That's his flip on that is about as disingenuous as anything else. I mean, I think that's a hot take that's gonna get him some recognition, views. Again, like she said, he might be trying to protect. I don't believe he believes what he was saying in that clip right there. I don't think his mind is being changed. I think it's a cynical play. I think it's a cynical play for listeners. I think it's a cynical play for views, listeners, and whatever favor he feel like he need to curry with the Trump administration. I don't believe his mind has changed on that.
I don't believe that it's even a question of whether or not he would do it. He would 100% do it, I believe. I just think that in order for him to do it, he gonna have to sign a couple more executive orders before he do it. It's some other stuff that he gonna have to put in place first before he do it because of the response that Kevin is talking about. He's not just gonna do it just because it sounds good in the moment. It's gonna be strategic. It's gonna be after he signs whatever executive order that changes laws around how police and the government responds to civil disobedience. Once he starts writing those executive orders, that ain't nothing but right around the corner. Trust and believe. Once he starts writing executive orders that structure how the government is going to decide to deal with civil disobedience moving forward, and it's coming. Please believe it's coming. Please believe it's coming. In this next 4 years, we are going to see some things change around how the government deals with civil disobedience. It's coming. It's inevitable. But once those things are set in place, the pardoning of a Derek Chauvin is right around the corner. So that's what we need to be more cognizant of. Not about him being pardoned anytime soon, but once he starts putting things in action, once Congress starts passing bills and laws and stuff that talk specifically about how the government and law enforcement is to deal with civil disobedience, that's when we should expect that to happen.
Yeah, I think
One
that
thing
Trump
I
could
would
do
say
it
on
and get
that,
away with it. I think he could
Yeah.
do it. I think he could do it. He could do it today and absolutely get away with it for a couple reasons. Number one, to Phil's point, Chauvin still has to sit in jail for the rest of his life because of state charges. So he's not going to be released out into the streets. And then number two, I just think you're overestimating the outrage that black people are going to put up. Like if they haven't put up an outrage, if they're not outraged about what you see already, like blackness, your financial security, your grandmother's social security, your job aspects. I mean, hell, the black middle class was built on federal jobs. All of that, and you still got about 20% of black folks that ain't gonna do nothing about it because some of them are caught up in the matrix themselves and they're not really thinking too strongly and brightly about what's going on. Most people are scared to death of losing their jobs already. And most people, you'll hear some people in the streets. Yeah, you're going to see the resistance, but I don't think it's going to be some huge resistance about this whatsoever. It'll just be another messed up thing that Donald Trump does. You add it to the list and you move on. And we just all trying to survive out here in Trump's America.
Can I say something about Ben Shapiro?
Sure.
Ben Shapiro is kind of in what I would call the line of Ann Coulter and the late Rush Limbaugh. And what's kind of scary, because I have friends who just love this guy, and I started listening to him just to be open-minded before I couldn't. I had to take a shower after I listened to him. But the thing to recognize about him and the others, they represent the so-called like intellectual side of what you might call the far right, though. What you might call the thing about him and the others, they give the educated people on the far right, it's like, oh, this is a factual basis to justify my beliefs, as opposed to like the Alex Jones or the Bannons, the guys that the educated people, at least who aren't going to admit they listen to, let's put it that way, are not going to, they're not going to quote them. Okay. But the scary thing about a guy like Ben Shapiro is he presents himself as, oh, I'm just giving you the facts, just the facts. The truth is, what he has in common with Rush Limbaugh and a couple of those others is they come to it's like they've got a solution in search of a problem. They know what they want to appeal to their base. They know where they have to end up. And so they twist all the facts and everything to get them there. So people, because he has millions of people listen to this guy, just so you know, millions.
Oh yeah, he's wealthy.
And he's successful, yeah. And again, it's people like a lot of friends I have would cite him but all he's doing really is providing an intellectual justification for beliefs like this one that absolutely are 100% wrong.
Phil is 100. That's exactly his role and his job. And I'll say it again. MAGA and the Republicans are way out ahead. They've been way out ahead for decades. So they've built all of these structures in digital media. They've got think tanks. They got Charlie Kirk with Turning Point USA on the college campuses. They are way out ahead, right? And that's exactly the role that Ben Shapiro plays for the Republican matrix. A couple years ago, I saw a video of Ben Shapiro. It's probably still up on YouTube. He was doing a speaking engagement, and a college student asked him how much money does he charge for each engagement. You know what this man said? $100K. So this is absolutely about money. Being a right-wing influencer has been for about a decade at least now. Extremely lucrative. If you can cut through and get to the top of that, buddy, you set. Because not only do they support with votes, they support with donations. You've got think tanks and billionaires that funnel money to Republican influencers. They know how to take care of their own. Democrats are just now picking up on that, and they're about a decade behind. So we'll see how this works for
Well,
everybody.
maybe Hot Mike can eventually compete with him, huh?
Maybe. I might be the reason why the Republican influencers don't want to support us, but it is.
Well, we can get rid of you. You can be replaced.
I can be replaced. Yes,
Yeah,
of course I
That's the
can.
way. That's show business, guys.
That's
Come
show
on.
business. Absolutely.
We see who's gonna be the first to sign on a dotted line.
Yeah, it's gonna be Phil. Phil is out of here.
Oh, started stabbing the back.
Look, if I got a better, hey, listen, if I got a lucrative offer that caused me to leave this podcast, I can tell you right now, yeah, I would take it. Yeah.
And you know what? I would tell you to take it, Phil. That's the thing about me. I would tell you to take it.
What is that thing? People you meet on the way up? I don't know, something like that. But
yeah, same people you meet on the way down. Right, something like that. Let's move on. Here's a local story that has to do with the Bengals stadium, and I thought it was really interesting. The Bengals are in negotiations with Hamilton County, and Hamilton County is now paying an expert on these kind of stadium negotiations $25,000 per month on retainer. I'm like, oh, gee, I'm in the wrong business. 25 G's, $25,000. But get this, there's an additional $450,000 payoff if Hamilton County and the Bengals come to an agreement on a new stadium deal. Talk about easy money. To me, when I read this tells me that there is no doubt whatsoever that a deal will be reached. And I'm not so sure at all that there's going to be anything significant in terms of benefiting Hamilton County taxpayers, primarily because Hamilton County is not willing to walk away from the deal, which means that the other guy's always going to win. Just my thoughts. What do you think?
Actually, having served on the commission, though, I think I mentioned before, the decision about that Bengals deal, well, the contract was made by the county commissioners before I was on the commission. Though I've told you, one of my biggest regrets on city council was supporting that whole tax thing, which looking back was a really terrible deal. I would disagree, though, Nathan, that hiring somebody like that isn't the right thing, because the fact is, I saw those numbers. They were huge, but I'm telling you something. We got taken on the initial Bengals deal, and to bring somebody, there's a reason that guy can charge this much. Okay, there's a reason. Okay, because this is a guy who presumably has been through this before. He's done that. He knows the ropes, and he knows how to deal with these teams. And as expensive as it might be, when you consider the millions of dollars at stake, I have no problem with them hiring this guy.
Yeah,
but do you see what I see though, Phil? Do you see that the fact that he's being paid $450,000 if a deal is made tells me that no matter what the nature of the deal may be, a deal is going to be made?
I think you're right.
I don't know the terms of the contract. I'm just saying in terms of people in our county needing the absolute best to negotiate and advise them, they do.
Yeah, look, you're absolutely 100% right, Nathan. The Bengals aren't going anywhere. There is going to be a deal of some sort. And anybody who thinks otherwise is fooling themselves. There's not a single commissioner on that commission, including Alicia Reese, who want to have their name on them being the reason the Bengals are no longer in Cincinnati. Now,
Cincinnati will riot.
I'm not saying that Alicia's not going to be in there fighting for the people trying to get a good deal, but she don't want her name. None of them do. Dumas, Driehaus sure don't. None of them want to have their names on two things. None of them want to be the next Bob Bettinghouse, the one who got another bad deal for the taxpayers, and they don't want to be the commissioner who's responsible for the Bengals leaving town. They don't want to be either one of those things. With those two things being effective, there is going to be some kind of deal together brought to bear. It's just a matter of how much they're going to be able to wrestle away from the Bengals and get back to the county. Hence why you've got this organization being paid what they're being paid and being brought in, because the county is in case they don't have anybody at the county who's capable of dealing with the Bengals in the way that is necessary to try to get any kind of deal that's going to be better for the taxpayers. So even though you look at the numbers and you say they're gaudy and they're spending a lot of money, to Phil's point, if they're able to wrestle anything away from the Bengals in terms of millions of dollars, they will have earned that money. And if I read the story correctly, that I would imagine that payday that they're due is contingent upon them being successful in getting something, not just any deal, but a deal that the county would consider to be, beneficial to taxpayers done. I'm sure that big payday is tied to that. So yeah, nobody listening to this or following the news should live under any delusion that the Cincinnati Bengals are going anywhere and that the county is going to let them go anywhere.
Yeah, I would agree. There's no way if Cincinnati loses the Bengals, the city will go into pure chaos, and I guarantee it. There's no way. Like what's already been said. There's not a commissioner up there who is going to want to be responsible for losing the Bengals. It just doesn't make any sense. The team it generates too much revenue. It's too much of a staple in the city.
It doesn't generate that much revenue. The Reds do, they don't. But it's more of a. It's not a money thing. I think it's a. What do you want to call it? Just popularity thing. I mean,
Yeah, it's
people don't want the
cultural. It's
Bengals because they
culture.
don't bring anything in like some of the others, like the Reds. Just
I
so you
mean,
know,
I can see that. I can
it's a
see that.
pride.
But I
It's like a
think that
pride thing.
but I think around it, like the things that happen around it, I think that it's just too beneficial to the city to lose the Bengals. There's gonna be a deal. There's even in the beginning when they first started talking about this, I knew there's no way they're not gonna make a deal happen here. They're gonna figure it out. I think that it would be intellectually dishonest to even consider the fact that we just might lose the Bengals. They're not going anywhere. They're gonna cut a deal. And I don't know much about the guys they're bringing in to do the consulting, but I ain't mad at that man for getting his money if both the city feels like his services are needed and worth what they're willing to pay him, and he is has the track record to back up his ability to do so. Pay that man his money and go about it. Let him go about his business.
Yeah, I read he's already been paid $100,000. TNT, what do you think?
No, I was just going to say the same thing. Like, what is that title again? Because I'm in the wrong profession. That's a lot of money for the consultant fee. But I absolutely agree with that type of money invested. Hello, my kids just walked in. With that type of money invested, yeah, I think in conclusion, that's a huge incentive. Deal will be made, and I agree too that no one wants to be the elected official that said that the Bengals left. People are still really excited about the team despite not making the playoffs. But what I do expect from our elected officials, our commissioners, particularly Alicia Reese, that they're going to comb through that contract with a fine-tooth comb. They're going to do their best to make sure that we don't have a bad deal in all of this. But I think a deal will be made ultimately.
Yeah, unless the Hamilton County Commissioners are willing to walk away, and that means let the Bengals leave, which I just think that the impact, I wonder out loud if the impact of the Bengals is really overblown. I mean, so we got the Bengals, but we still got, people living in extreme poverty. You know what I'm saying? So I just feel like the way that we judge these NFL owners is completely wrong. Like we judge them solely by what they do on the field. But what I want to know is, you got all this money, you worth hundreds of millions of dollars, you're making hundreds of millions of dollars every year. How is the impact and the influence of you being here helping other people who aren't necessarily associated with the Bengals? Like if you're a caterer and you're working with the Bengals at some level, I get it. If you clean carpets, you got a carpet cleaning services, and you got a
Yeah, but
contract with the Bengals,
Nathan,
I get it.
if the
But
Bengals were here,
outside of that field, I just wonder. We got all these economic problems in this city, and yet we got this multi-million-dollar business downtown. If the Bengals left, I think we'd be okay. We
yeah, but
figure
here's
it
the
out.
problem: if the
Maybe
Bengals
another
left,
team would come in with a better deal that would be better for the Hamilton County taxpayers.
if the Bengals left, Kevin would have nothing to do on the weekends because he's always jet setting around, following the team all over the place. The poor guy he'd be listless. He'd go into such a severe depression that it wouldn't be worth it. I'd pay millions to not have that happen.
I have to acknowledge that I would be disappointed, but at the same time, that doesn't mar my objectivity about sort of what is the best deal for the taxpayers, and whether or not I can love the Bengals and still agree that taxpayers might be getting hosed on the amount of revenue and different things that they've got there. I won't belabor it in this conversation. Maybe we can have it as it gets closer to stadium negotiations and some other real news happening with it, but I had an interesting coffee a couple weeks ago with someone involved in the original negotiations, not from the county side, but from the other side of the table. And I got some interesting, background and perspective that obviously I'm not going to get into on this show, but at a later time when we're talking about the Bengals and stadium negotiations, I'll share some of the insight from that conversation.
Well, here's a question. So, if this negotiator, what a sweet deal, $450,000 to arrive at an agreement that everybody knows that you're going to arrive at. I mean, come on,
It's the terms, though. It's the terms.
It don't matter what the terms is. They are going to arrive at an agreement. That's a guaranteed $450K in this person's bank account. It's just amazing. But here's my question for you. Let's say this big time, he's sort of like the big time negotiator, comes through with a deal. And let's say the deal is only marginally better for the taxpayers. Is it still worth it?
Then what? Then what?
Than what we have right now.
No. That's not the question. Is it marginally better than what they would have negotiated? The commissioners would have negotiated without this guy.
No, I'm just saying if the overall deal that this negotiator arrives at, if it's marginally better in terms of better for the taxpayers than what we have right now, is it worth it? Is it
what
worth
we have now?
Yes.
In the comparison, everything has changed in terms of NFL revenues and stuff. What I'm saying is the choice is do we or the county commissioners negotiate this themselves or with the administration, or do they use this guy? That's the question. Whether they would be as you say, marginally better having him versus just doing it themselves. Okay?
Yeah, but that's not the question I'm asking. The question I'm asking is if they arrive, whether it's the Hamilton County Commissioner or this guy, if they arrive, and it sounds like Kevin already has an answer, if they arrive at a deal that's only slightly better, is it worth it to keep the Bengals?
Yes. Well, so your question is it worth it to keep the Bengals, or is it worth it to pay the people to keep the Bengals? To keep the Bengals.
Yeah.
Well, I just started out by saying the Bengals aren't going anywhere. So regardless, I think it depends on how difficult. Here's why I say the Bengals aren't going anywhere, for two reasons. One, the Bengals aren't going anywhere because I don't think the Bengals want to go anywhere. And I also think that it's going to be impossible for the Bengals to go anywhere other than Cincinnati and get the kind of deal that they've got here in Cincinnati. They're just not going to be able to go, even if another city said, hey, we would love to welcome the Bengals. They're not going to, if you look at a lot of these stadium deals today, organizations are having to put in more of their own money to get these stadiums built and everything like that. They're not going to get the same kind of deal from taxpayers that they're getting here in Cincinnati. So there's that. The only way the Bengals move and leave out of Cincinnati is if the Brown family sell the team, somebody else buys it, and then I think there's a period of time where they have to remain in the market, and then after that they can decide to move someplace else. I think that's the only way the Bengals leave Cincinnati from the ownership perspective. It's not going to leave from the county perspective for the reasons that I said. Nobody there wants to be the reason that the Bengals leave. Now, given those two things that you kind of know those two things, then that's where it gets into the negotiations and having people who are skilled enough to say, how can we get a better deal for the taxpayers? And so that's where I say, like, even if it's marginally better, that could still mean millions of dollars coming back to taxpayers. So in terms of would it be worth it to pay the firm? Yes, I think the larger conversation of whether Cincinnati is better off with or without the Bengals, I think that's a separate conversation as to whether paying this firm that money is worth it to get a slightly better deal. I would say yes, any deal that the county can get that's better than what they have right now is going to be worth paying them for. I think whether or not keeping the Bengals in Cincinnati is worth that or not, I think is a separate conversation.
But that's the conversation I'm trying to have, right?
Yeah,
About the Bengals.
I mean,
it's completely subjective. My stance on it is Bengals Spengles. You know what I'm saying? Like, show me how them being here is having a positive impact throughout our greater Cincinnati area. Now, I know people are making money, but it's the same old people. But show me how it's having a positive impact throughout greater Cincinnati, and then I'll be more willing to think to be able to jump on board with it. But I just think that, we so caught up. It's like for many people, we don't have an identity unless it's the Bengals. As if, before the Bengals, we were absolutely nothing. And I think that it doesn't matter what the nature of the deal is. People would rather have the Bengals, even with a bad deal for taxpayers, because it makes them feel good. They get to put on the jersey.
I think it's a little bit more than that, Nathan. I think that's an oversimplification. I mean, look, it's true. There are some direct things that you can point to, businesses that pop up that benefit from the Bengals being around, that sort of thing. But I think a lot of the challenge with this is a lot of the things that you talk about are kind of anecdotal, and they're tough to nail down in terms of how much does being a major league sports city really impact your ability to attract visitors, businesses, to raise your national profile and get free press that you don't get otherwise. Like every time the Bengals have a primetime game that the national audience is watching, all eyes are on Cincinnati, that
otherwise
media,
wouldn't be.
Yeah, that media attention, that press, you can't really put dollar figures on those types of things. And so I think it's an oversimplification to kind of like what you're saying, because unfortunately there are a lot of benefits of being a major league city that you won't absolutely be able to nail down. Like a business won't come to you and say that because Cincinnati had the Bengals, that's the reason why we moved 20,000 jobs here. But they might admit that it didn't hurt, that being a major league city is something that's attractive. That's one of many things that Cincinnati has that makes it attractive. So to say that the Bengals being here doesn't have any benefit to Cincinnati, I think is an oversimplification. I would say to you, would Cincinnati be all right with the Bengals? Sure, probably. They probably find something else. Would they be as great? I don't know. That's hypothetical speculation that you don't know until you find out. And I think a lot of people don't want to find that out.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
I think it would be a culture shock more than anything. Like I'm 32 years old. As long as I can remember, the Bengals have been in Cincinnati. So I think that for somebody like around my age, it would be a huge culture shock. Being like Kevin said, being part of a city that is a major league city, just outside of the cultural part of it, it does put a lot of eyes on the city that otherwise might not be there. Now I will say that with us getting FC Cincinnati, it has also become another thing that has attracted people to the city, I believe. And so it might, if we didn't have FC Cincinnati, it might be an even bigger impact, or we might see an even bigger, like at least economic wise, we might see an even bigger, economic shift. But I think that because we have now things like FC Cincinnati, and of course we still have the Reds, and I think they're still doing the basketball thing. They're still trying to figure that part out. I think currently we do have the Ohio Kings that are here, but like I think that it more than anything, it would be a culture shock. But I think economically, it would be kind of interesting to see how that plays out now that we do have FC Cincinnati. But I also think that when you think about the economic impact of having the Bengals, they might not make any like revenue that we can see, in real time. But I also believe that when you are a tourist somewhere, at least this is how I go other places. If I'm a tourist in the city, I'm not just looking for what's around the stadium or what's connected directly to the team. I am off, like, at least in these days, in this day and age, TikTok and Reels. You can see a TikTok or a Reel. It'll show you a business that don't have nothing to do with the Bengals. But oh, that look like a good bar for us to go hang out at, or that look like a good restaurant for us to go hang out. Or oh, look at their mall. They got these certain stores in their mall that we might not have back at home. Because of reasons like that, I think that is a big part of why you don't just up and get rid of the Bengals, and you say things like, well, what kind of economic impact does that have for taxpayers? I believe that's still very much so part of it. When tourists come into the city and they spend money at our businesses and at our different, the different places in the city, it does something for taxpayers. It might not be what we want, but it does something. And to remove that, I think it puts taxpayers in a worse off situation. So I think for that reason alone, it's worth it.
And let me say this too, Nathan. Here's something else that people forget when we talk about taxpayers. Like, the money that goes towards the Bengals is a sales tax. And so one of the things that people don't realize is that the Hamilton County sales tax, that the majority of the sales tax that comes in that is paid is not paid by Cincinnati residents. It's paid by people from outside of Cincinnati, whether that's the suburbs or people who come in who come in. So the percentage of the sales tax that goes to the stadium actually is not a large part of the city of Cincinnati. Let me just say that part. And it ties into sort of what Raven said, because as Phil said, I do go out of town and travel to quite a few Bengals games. And sometimes we go on with busloads of people from Cincinnati who, 7 or 8 busloads of people from Cincinnati who go to these games. And we do exactly what Raven said. We stay at the hotels there. We eat at the restaurants there. We go out and we shop at the stores there. We visit the tourist attractions there. We don't just go to the games. We do all of those things while we're there. And usually if we go into a game, it's like a 3 or 4 day thing, like a long weekend type trip. So that's 3 or 4 days. And this is just the group that I travel with. There are many other Bengals fans who travel, who don't go with the groups that I go to, who go to the games. And so that's all tax dollars, sales tax dollars that they're getting from the things that we're spending. We're spending at the hotels, we're spending at the restaurants, we're spending at the stores and at the tourist attractions, all of that. And so Cincinnati is seeing that every time they host a game and people come in from out of town, all of those sales tax dollars are part of the pot that is going back into what is being paid out to them in terms of the stadium. So there's the economics of this that you kind of have to look at it, that is not as clear cut as like all of the tax dollars that are coming from the sales taxes are coming from Cincinnati residents. It would be different if you were talking about property taxes or something like that were directly being paid by the people, the property owners here in Cincinnati and Hamilton County. It's not that type of tax. It's the sales tax. So I think that's an important thing to remember. Again, just as you're having the conversation, and I don't say that to tilt the conversation in one way, shape, or the other. I just say that as information for people to consider as you're talking about it. We're talking about sales tax, not property tax. And sales tax isn't just paid by people who live in Cincinnati.
Yeah, they got us. They got us thinking that we can't survive without the Bengals. And I'm gonna say it again. We was here before the Bengals, and Cincinnati. What makes Cincinnati great is Cincinnatians. It's the families. It's the innovators. It's the hardworking people. That's what makes Cincinnati great. It ain't the damn Bengals. We'll be just okay. We would find another revenue source that perhaps was better for us. And as long as we maintain this attitude that we gotta have them, then they always gonna have us at a disadvantage. Like any relationship, if she wants to be with you more than you want to be with her, you got her, and vice versa. And that's where the Bengals have us right now.
That just triggered me, Nate. I ain't gonna
Good,
lie.
good,
That
good,
just triggered me.
good.
Oh man.
Good.
funny.
That's all I got, folks. I mean, I opened the show at the end here to, talk about anything that might have been missed, any points or anything you want to bring up. Phil isn't with us, but hopefully he'll come before we leave. So speak now or forever hold your peace.
Just to kind of still, I guess, in the point of the whole Bengals and Cincinnati thing, which somebody is a lot of people are upset with me because of the way that I pronounce it. I pronounce it the way that I've always pronounced it since I was a child. I call them the Bengals because that's what it was called in my house growing up. My grandmother is from Clinton, Alabama. She got a twang when she talking. She called them the Bengals, so I call them the Bengals. Leave me alone. But anyways, in saying that, I will say this as well. I think that if we're gonna have this conversation, we do have to look at, because I know that this is not just a brand new concept. I believe it was the Raiders who went from, didn't they go from what city were they in? And
Yeah,
now
they were in Oakland.
they
And
were in
moved to
Oakland and
Las
now they're
Vegas.
in Las Vegas, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
So I think it would be worth looking at that to see how that impacted Oakland. I would think that it would be useful to look at how the Nets moved from, did they move from Jersey to Brooklyn or Brooklyn to Jersey, either or.
Yeah.
I think that in order to have this conversation, at least me personally, I would like to look more at how those things measured out before I can really say whether or not this is a thing. If one of y'all know the impact that had on both of those cities or all four of those cities, I would love to know.
No, I
Yeah, I mean,
can't
you
tell
don't
you
even have
offhand, but
to.
that's a great question.
Yeah,
Great
you
point.
don't even have to go that far to look. You can look at, Cleveland. Cleveland had the Browns for a number of years, and then when they left and headed to Baltimore, which that's an
What?
even
I
better
didn't even know
case.
that was a thing. That don't
Yeah,
even sound right.
that's
Yeah.
an even better case to look at, because sort of the Browns move to Baltimore was kind of sort of the backdrop of this, kind of the conversations around the evolution of these stadium deals and whatnot. But so Cleveland, went through a period of time where they didn't have a professional team. So you could probably take a look at that city and say, okay, well, when Cleveland had the Browns, what was it like? Then they lost them for a period of time. Then they got them back. They got a team back in Cleveland. And what has it been since? And that's probably a even better analysis of what Cincinnati might look like if the Bengals went away. Another Ohio team, another kind of small market-ish team in the Browns. So you wouldn't even have to go to Oakland to look at that. You could look at something right here in the state and try to say, hey, what did Cleveland look like during that period where they didn't have the Browns versus the bookended periods of when they did have them?
I didn't even know that was a thing. Y'all just taught me something.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a thing going on right now with the Browns where they're moving their stadium from downtown Cleveland, as I understand it, to a neighborhood that's sort of on the outskirts in the suburbs. So we'll see how that impacts there. It's got to have an impact, right? You think about sports bars and all of the traffic for the Cleveland Browns. Even with the losing season, they've got a really, really loyal fan base. So good questions. Listen, Phil, we're wrapping up, man. Anything you want to get off your chest about this show? I know you got a problem with Kevin.
That's
No,
not new. That's every show.
That's every show.
Kevin is a great guy and a great writer and everything else. No, I don't have anything to say. I've enjoyed talking and like hanging out with you guys.
Oh, absolutely. Enjoy it as well. TNT, anything on your mind?
You
You're
muted,
muted.
TNT. Yeah,
Still muted.
still muted. Can't hear you.
Let me check on my end. Yep. It's not on my
It's
end.
me. It's me. It's me. It's me. No, I have missed the first part of the show. So the only thing I would add to that is that I'm thankful for the courageousness of Representative Al Green. I would hope that more young people had stood with him. Everybody didn't have to leave the room, but it just seemed weird seeing Jasmine Crockett just stare at him as he walked past. Out of love, it didn't necessarily have to be her, but to walk out, they would have to drag me out. I would have caused such a scene. And you needed that. You also needed the signs. I think every time Trump said a lie or just said something that was hypocritical, those signs was important. The camera shots is just like to be able to like check in real time, like this isn't true. So everything they did in resistance was important. But what we can do is call Representative Al Green or email him and tell him thank you. Let him know that the public, we appreciate what he did. And also one Democrat from Ohio that did vote to censure him, Marcy Kaptur. You can call her office, email her, and let her know that we don't agree with her divided stance. Like, you know, she should be united with the party, coming from the position of the president, where he's literally ushering out racial slurs to Elizabeth Warren, calling her Pocahontas. Like I said in the comments, you know, all bets are off. You know, you have a convicted felon president. He defiles the office every single day he's there. His existence is reprehensible, and to call him the leader of our country, it's an embarrassment every single day. And so the resistance is important, and I hate that the situation where we are right now, where it's just so much vitriol toward Democrats, like, oh, you should do more, you should do this and everything else. But it's just like, we rendered them powerless. We gave them no power in this position right now. So there's not a whole lot they can do other than stand for something, be united, and then come to the people. As they're doing things throughout the public and making all these policies, they need to come to the audience, or to the public, and let us know the alternative, instead of, you know, cutting up, making all these cuts and only impacting 1% of the budget on the backs of the poor and middle class. They should be looking here at the corporate welfare and all the billions and trillions that are going here. Make that message loud and clear. Let us know where the real opposition, where the real problems are, and come to those, and come to the town halls, and continue to listen to us, so you can have the words of the people to take back to Washington. So, but it's not going to be too much they can do, because they're not the majority. And we got to understand that too. And if we want to make a difference, people that didn't vote last election, get registered to vote right now. Don't wait till somebody come with that clipboard to tell you. You can register to vote online right now and get that. And if you know any family members, get them registered to vote online right now and make those actions. And we need to apply pressure to the Republicans who do have the power, even if they're not in your state, just to let them know that we see what you're doing and we don't agree with it, because their base that they answer to, they light a fire under them, and they make it really known when they're displeased with anything they're doing. They're doing it right now. So we have to have that same action forward reality and momentum.
Nathan, can I say one other thing?
Sure.
I think, because we didn't talk about the substance of his speech that much, I'll just say that what was most offensive to me were the personal insults and personal attacks. No matter how bad, how much you disagree with the person's policies, I cannot believe that anybody, I don't care how much they agree with Trump, wouldn't be offended. First of all, to constantly insult your predecessor, not to mention the fact that most of it was totally false, but to be so petty as to spend that speech over and over mocking and attacking Biden. I mean, issues aside, it shows so little class. So little class. And that comment about the Pocahontas comment, I actually am not a big fan of hers, and I think in other situations his description of her of that way is kind of funny, but to insult her like that in front of the whole country, in front of the whole Congress, that was so classless and so tasteless. But I will say one thing, and I know it's hard to believe, but probably maybe more so than the rest of you, probably the majority of people I hang out with, not all, but the majority are either voted for Trump or just really crazy about Trump. And I can just tell you that the ones that are really crazy about him, they, believe it or not, they think the same of Biden as we do of Trump. And I'm just saying that to let you know, it may be hard to believe, but there is a fever among these people. It's hating Democrats, it's hating Biden and all this, but it's real, and that's what they believe.
And you know what? Hearing Phil say that and acknowledge that he knows that makes his arguments that we were having earlier in the program all that much more ridiculous, in terms of him wanting to try to
I can't win on this show.
No, you can't, because you should have left well enough alone and not gave that little diatribe. You would have been a lot better off.
I'm sorry. That's what I believe. I'm sorry.
Because to sit there and say that people eat up this garbage that Donald Trump puts out there. And the fact that you are just continually like, this is Donald Trump. You're talking about is he showed a lack of class. Like, that's not news. That's not breaking news. Like, that's who this dude is. That's what he does. And the fact that Democrats just still kind of sit back, and even Reagan Republicans sit back, and there's just this sort of this appalled, like, I can't believe he's so classless. Like, really? After a term and 6 weeks?
No, I
like,
didn't say I can't believe it. I believe it. I believe me. I believe
you're
it.
still like this is par for the course. And so this is why I'm saying, like, the resistance can't be what you just did there. What you just did there.
My resistance that I suggested was shutting down. I suggested shutting down the government.
Ain't moving. That ain't moving nobody. I just can't believe he's so classless. That ain't currying voters.
What about shutting down the government?
Yeah, you know why Trump is getting voters for exactly what you said. As classless as what he's doing, they love it because they're sitting back there saying, we want to stick it to the libs. And you're saying all of the things about the libs and Joe Biden that we think and maybe we can't say. And so we love it that you're unapologetic about it. And that's what we want from our leadership. The base is telling the Democrats a similar message, but in a different way. They're not saying that you got to be classless and belittle, but they're saying to the Democrats, we need you to show us a different type of fight than what we're seeing from you right now. And Democrats instead are having that same kind of little, the appalled statesmanship type thing that you just did there, Phil. And that is a losing formula.
Well,
the Democrats better start listening. Look, Greg Landsman got a taste of it when he held his town hall forum here. And what did the people say to Greg Landsman? Hey, dude, this little calm approach that you're taking ain't working for us. We need you to be more aggressive. Greg Landsman need to listen to that and take that back to Washington, because you know what's going to happen if he don't? He ain't going to get elected next time around. And he needs to start listening to what his constituents is telling him in these town hall forums. They ain't playing because they know exactly what you just found out, Phil, that the other side.
I didn't find it out. I've known it.
Okay.
With all due respect,
then to know and not do better, that is the essence of
with
failure.
all due respect, I'm not looking for any pats in the back, but I did run in the reddest district in Ohio as an anti-MAGA Republican and appeared in all of these forums where they all love Trump. They were nice to me. I'm not criticizing that. So I think I've been willing to be actively aggressive. I don't think I can be criticized for that. And but also keep in mind, again, what I think, and I agree with Steve Schmidt, and this is where the rubber's going to meet the road. Are the Democrats willing to shut down the government, to stop, or to say, look, unless you do these things, unless you reinstate the inspector generals, unless you do this, unless you stay out of these offices, all this, we are going to shut down the government. I think that's about as aggressive a step as you can take, but I think it's necessary.
Yeah, it's just gonna have to be done correctly. It got to be done correctly, because if they do it in a way that is not done correctly, they will very much so see the pushback that they are scared of, why they're not moving on it right now. They're going to have to do it in a way that makes sense and that is proper, because if they do it in a way that is not going to make sense to their base, they risk losing the upcoming midterm elections. They risk it.
Yeah, well, being courageous and doing the right thing often involves risk.
If I was working with Greg, back to Kevin's point, if I was working with Greg, because I've seen a lot of his stuff, where is the passion? Show me some teeth. Get mad. Get angry. Let me see it. I want to feel it. Like you feel it now. I don't get that from Greg. He's talking, and I know Greg, nice guy. I think he means well, but he's trying to keep it too cool. But you're telling me that they're destroying the government, but you acting cool. It don't mix. The body language, the face, show me some teeth. Cry, get mad, do something that matches what you're telling me the threat that you're fighting is. And I just don't see that consistently enough from a lot of Democrats. The Republicans do it. I mean, they'll get on their high horse and get mad about the dumbest thing ever, but they're showing emotion, right? They're showing passion. And I think that people have picked up on that. And they're like, oh, yeah, that guy right there is showing passion. Show me some passion, Democrats. I think they will eventually. Just don't wait until it's too late.
Yeah, the trouble with that with Landsman is I just don't think that's who he is. I mean, I've gotten to know Greg over the last few years, And I think like what you're talking about there, like that's just not who he is. And I think if he tried to be that, it would it would come off as disingenuous because that's just not his personality and that's not who he is. I don't know what it would take to get Greg to that point. I know when they were protesting out in front of his house and there were threats to his family and even all of that, you know, when the whole Israel Palestine thing was going on, even in the midst of that, you know, even that didn't get him outside of the demeanor that you normally see. Now, maybe in his household, I don't know, but at least what he demonstrated publicly didn't even get to that point, even when he felt like the safety of his family might even be a particular issue. So I think his front facing demeanor and what he puts out there, I think I would be shocked if and would wonder what it would take to get that from him. I think he's coming from, or at least he did coming into this, believing in there were some sane middle of the road Republicans who you might be able to work with and come up with something that might mitigate or limit the Trump damage. Um, for all of the reasons that we didn't get into on this program, which maybe we'll talk about at some point about the fear factor that might exist within the Republican circles,
including fear of physical violence to them and their
yeah,
families.
yeah, that has cowed many Republican elected officials, may make it impossible for Landsman to get that kind of middle ground that he was hoping for there. Real quick, I'll say a quick piece. I wanted to say it's great to have our two beautiful, intelligent sisters on the show program with us today. I think is this the first time that we've had them both on at the same time, TNT and Raven, or before? Well, we don't. It doesn't happen enough. The fact that I'm thinking this might have been the first time says that we don't have it enough. So it's great to see both of you on
There are
there.
definitely too many men on this podcast. There's no question.
Absolutely. Too many men with not enough hair on this program for my liking. Anyway.
Go in.
And the second thing is thank you to Raven for shouting out the Ohio Kings. I appreciate her mentioning that in even though we can at this point be considered in the same breath as a Bengals or a FC or a Reds. I appreciate the love nonetheless on that. And I am just so mad at the Bengals today about this whole Trey Hendrickson thing. They make it hard for you to be a fan. They really do. They make it hard because
what's the latest? I missed it.
Like maybe one day the Brown family will not live up to the reputation that they have of just being cheap and all of this other kind of stuff.
What did I miss, Kevin? What happened?
That maybe they gave Trey Hendrickson, instead of paying him, increasing his contract, they gave him permission to get a trade from another team.
Oh, that's good.
Which doesn't mean that that's going to happen because the Bengals still have control. Like they could demand 2 first-round picks, which they probably wouldn't get. But it is a sign that they feel like they're not close on terms for a long-term contract, and so they're putting that out there. But just when you think that like maybe they've changed, maybe they might be committed to putting a winning team on the field year after year, they do this kind of stuff that is just so deflating, and I'm just frustrated. I'm frustrated because next thing you know, Joe Burrow will be talking about he won out of Cincinnati, and then it'll just be a dumpster fire. So I'm mad about that today.
All I know is they better get rid of that Taylor Britt. I know he got part of my name in his name, but that dude got to go, and they better shape up that defense, or it's all for naught. But something.
You're pretty critical, Nicole. You're pretty judgmental.
What you talking about, Phil? Look, I wanted to shoot back with what you were saying about the Democrats shutting down the government. So, from my understanding, all they need is the simple majority from the Republicans. So, what actually can?
No, I believe, and again, I'll try to look at this more, but I believe they have to get a certain number of Democrats at some point to keep the government going. Yeah. But I'll dig that up and we'll talk next time.
Because I think that they already passed like a resolution, like what the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, what he's doing now is getting them all together. There's usually a far right that always vote to shut down the government, but with what they're proposing is so far right, kind of like in their lane of like what they want. I don't think they're going to have any opposition this time. And from my understanding, all they need is the majority of their own party, that they don't even need So all that stuff about with the Social Security and cutting Medicare and eliminating the Department of Education, some of these extreme measures can actually go in without any Democrat vote in opposition. So
Right.
that's
To my knowledge, what you're
that's why
saying is correct.
the pressure needs to be applied on Republicans right now. Like they really need to understand that, like, if you do this, if you go there, this will be the end of your career as a politician. It don't matter for Trump because he only got one more term. He out. You know what I'm saying? So doing all these ridiculous things don't really mean too much for him. But for all of them, if they want to continue in Congress or whatnot, we need to apply pressure on those Republicans. That's my point.
And with that, guys, I appreciate your time. Sexy Phil stepped away for a second, but I appreciate him as well. Have a great Friday and a great weekend, and we'll be back next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Thank you for your time, everybody.
See you later.
Appreciate you.